Hey, Sumeet.
Hey, Peter.
Welcome to the Councilio sessions.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
I'm really pleased to have you on. You are an esteemed guest. This podcast has only been going for a little time, so you're one of my first. But I was really pleased when I got the opportunity to sort of get you on, and people will get to know you through over the next hour or so, and that's really what it's about.
It's my honor, Peter.
It's the people behind the technology. Those of us who work in the tech sector, we typically have been doing it for a long time, right? And but at the end of the day, we're just humans as well, and we have very distinct backgrounds. And yours is one of the more interesting ones, to me anyway. So, what is your origin story? Like even before tech, where's 10-year-old Sumeet, and like where does it all begin for you?
So I grew up in New Delhi, which is the capital of India. That's where my schooling, high schooling, engineering, all that happened. I had no clue to get to software engineering, to computer engineering. In fact, in India, you go through kind of an entrance exams to kind of get into engineering colleges. So like any other kid growing up, I also gave one, and I was fortunate to get a higher rank. So I still remember when I went to college for my enrollment, while traveling to the college, I had thought that I would select electronics as the major. And when I reached the college and I was talking to some of the seniors there, they all said, no, if your rank is above a particular threshold, then you should be picking computer engineering. And just on the fancy that day, I just selected computer engineering.
That was the moment.
That was the moment. I had no computer at home, so really had no exposure to computers apart from in school, maybe an hour or two in the week doing some computer programming. So it was just fate.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, computing, to me, it was a 1980s thing. That's where it sort of came into our household. My dad was he worked for the Commonwealth Bank in Australia, but he was always into stamp collecting, coin collecting. The weekends were for like work in the yard. Friday night, Saturday nights was like watching the old movies on TV or going to the video store. And then like one week he came home with this computer. I don't know what it was. But I always used to joke with him. He's no longer with us now, but I always used to joke with him. That was the week I lost my dad, because from that moment on he became obsessed with computers, and he would just do anything with it. But eventually most of his weekends got taken up by just backing up whatever he'd done that week, and he'd be 20 floppy disks of backup that took him 8 hours to do, and that became a routine for him. So he's a little bit on the spectrum, my dad. But that to me was sort of my first introduction to computers. So it's really interesting that you didn't have exposure to it in your home.
No, actually, my story about my dad is contrary to yours. My dad is a civil engineer, so he's built bridges and power plants, and so I remember when I started working, my first job, and one day he said, "You get paid so much to be a typist?" Because for him, it was like, the real engineering is civil and chemical and mechanical, and so it was funny how things evolved.
That's fascinating too, because I still see that today in corporate technology, where if we think about those original engineering disciplines, then we go, okay, well, sure, we understand engineering is complex, and you don't get a hydraulic engineer to do something in aeronautics, or you don't want someone who is a civil engineer building a dam or something like that. You know what I mean? And so, but when it comes to IT, it's like, well, isn't it all the same? And so that sort of separation in engineering disciplines, I don't think has sort of followed over into technology, which...
The other thing, I remember if you are doing your medical, for example, right, or you're doing your law degree, right, your family would call for advice. Hey, you are in third year of medical, my son has got a fever, what do you think, right? Nobody ever did for software engineers.
Yeah.
They did it for hardware engineers. My PC is broken or my floppy drive is stuck, but nobody ever, at least in India when I was growing up, considered software engineering calling them up, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is like, at least in India at those times, and now things have changed, it was hard for people to pay for software. For hardware, yes, because they can touch and feel, or software. So, so I think the early days of software engineering in India was very different. Now, of course, it kind of picked it up, and it picked it up with all the IT services companies and things like that.
And this isn't a broad generalization, but engineering is big in India.
It is.
I think, to your point, your father was in it. It's been, all those traditional disciplines have always been part of India because it's such a large economy and it's been very self-sufficient, so it's built everything itself. So, of course, it's natural that when software engineering comes along, it's something that's embraced wholeheartedly by India as a continent and country. And then, as you say, that essentially the services arm of the global IT economy is now Indian. Like it's been embraced to that depth, and it always strikes me when I go to India, which I do several times a year, and if I'm speaking at an event in India, I have to be really conscious that their view of software is an engineering view of software. That's typically who's in the audience, which can be, I don't know what your experience is, but I find it's very different, say, in Australia or other parts of the world where I don't think necessarily that hardcore engineering perspective carries over. I don't know, it's sort of, do you notice that at all?
Yeah, I think, and tell me if this is where you're going. When in my current role or so far in the industry as I came up, when you talk to a customer in India, a CIO of a large bank or manufacturing or retailer, that individual is a lot more clued into technology because probably his or her background is engineering. So they immediately want to know the how part of the product that you're trying to talk to them about. Whereas in other parts of geography, they're still very focused around the what, the outcome it's going to drive, and so on and so forth. So in some sense, that way, the background of engineering, even among business people, is not a rarity, right? You could find it quite easily.
Yeah, I think that's true. That's a good way to put it. And even, I'd say there's a deeper respect for engineering in India than you might typically see it be pushed in other countries, which I think is great because fundamentally, part of where we've arrived at today is, some of the classic physics of technology management and technology governance. I think in many countries we've sort of walked away from them as we can buy things as a service, and some of those things we assume are embedded in the products that we now buy. But in India, they're still very focused on how is this put together and how does this fit with other parts, and can we build it ourselves, and how does this integrate? All these classic architectural questions, which are fundamentally engineering questions from a software or technology perspective, but there's been this separation to those, things like TOGAF and things like COBIT and things like ITIL and things like Dharma and all those core fundamentals. I call them the physics of technology, but I think we've, certainly in Australia, they were fundamental in the 90s and the 2000s. it's rare to see them, and I think that's part of the chaos that we see in organizations today.
Yeah, I think that you touched about build versus buy. I mean, India is a land of developers.
Yeah.
Almost everybody's first instinct is we should build it in-house.
Yes.
Right, and so that's the first instinct. And the second one is about the architecture. People, just because of the size of the country, the population, right, the performance and scale matters a lot in the software. It needs to be one of the principles of the architecture when anything is designed, just because of the size and scale of the country and the population it serves. Especially if you look at the large banks or retailers, manufacturers, right?
Yeah.
Not only their own employee headcount, but the customers they are serving is in millions or billions. So that's I think why people have learned to stay true to the architecture.
Yeah, I think that's true of Japan as well, but probably for different reasons. I think in Japan, that there's always been a propensity to build it themselves, with a high focus on building the country and maintaining the culture and being true to what is Japanese. Whereas in India, it's probably. Do you think that is the case there, or is it's the scale problem? Which is
no, I think it's the scale. It's two different things. One is scale, and the other thing is, I don't know if you have heard this word called jugaad.
Right.
Jugaad is an Hindi word, very commonly used in India. It basically signifies a creative way of getting things done, right? So. People don't, when they hit a roadblock or limitation, not only in technology, in general in life, they'll find unique way of solving problem. And in some sense, it's also because you can say innovation gets driven more in a constrained environment. When you feel constrained, that's where you find innovative way of doing things.
Yeah.
So it's almost like that. And that's very prevalent in the society as well. People find creative ways to solve problems. That's where that word comes from, and it sometimes shows up in the way we work as well.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not uncommon that we won't have the purity of the architecture, but we would definitely have the outcome.
Yeah. That's interesting to me, because it's almost a dichotomy. There's to bring the structure of the architecture, which is important to the engineering side of the Indian software environment, but then to have the creativity, because you need creativity to solve problems when you may not have access to the right tools all the time, or you have a culture of do it yourself. Like, it's a fascinating mix.
Yeah, it is. But it's also it's how we kind of grew up as well. And India has been a developing nation. It's not developed, right? So that shows up in the society.
Yeah.
That shows up in the middle class mindset, etc. And that has made people to kind of find creative ways to solve problems, and that comes in personal, professional life as well. So you will find a lot of people finding ways to solve problems, which may or may not be purity of the architecture.
Yeah. So you found yourself in software engineering without sort of a mentor or someone to sort of pull you into it, but then what happens then? Because you end up at CA. Right.
Yeah, no, before that. So my first job was a very interesting job. So my first job was in a product organization. India being a IT services hub, like you mentioned, in my 30 years of career, I've never worked for a services company.
Okay.
So my first job was a product organization, a very startup-ish, very small organization, awesome set of people. I'm still friends with many of them from that first job. And it taught me a couple of good lessons. It was building products for handheld devices, and I'm talking about mid-90s. There was software from Sony called Magic Cap, there was Palm Pilot, etc. And we were building software like mail on the go. How do you access mail on your handheld devices, or how do you access database? So how do you make JDBC calls over the wire to a server and get the response back in the application? It was great tech, great learning experience for somebody coming out of the college. But the company went down under predominantly because the product was ahead of its time.
Yeah. Well, yes, because you're talking in the 90s.
Yes.
This is pre-internet.
Pre-internet.
So we had to read about this stuff in technology magazines. Like, there was nothing online about it. So, being ahead of its time.
True, and the handheld devices are expensive.
Yeah.
They're not ubiquitous.
Yeah.
Right. The Wi-Fi or the phone lines, etc., are not that cheap. So it just didn't the ecosystem didn't exist for the product to be successful.
Yeah. We were still checking. Like, I was in sales positions at that time, and we were only checking our email at the end of a very long day when you're back in the motel room and you plug in the phone line and you replicate your Lotus Notes database to get your mail. Like, there was no need for it.
Yeah.
Was there?
No, I still remember in my early days, the whole office would be connected over a modem, right? And then everybody is downloading their emails, etc. When the modem connects, right?
Yeah.
Those were the days. So it was ahead of this time, and not surprising, the company got folded. But the people that I made association was great talent, learned a lot, and taught me a lesson that even though I'm an engineer, the context of the problem that you are solving for always needs to be front and center of the work that you're doing. And that kind of stayed with me.
I think we could touch on it later, but I think that's an interesting philosophy for ServiceNow right now as well, isn't it? With the whole AI push, but let's leave that for now and come back to it because, so you've clearly had a view your whole career of this balance that there's a technology part, but there's a creative and a customer part as well, and sort of pulling them all together is sort of the trick. But at some point, what was next?
Yeah, so I was with that company, and then through that organization, I actually moved to US, and then in the US, I spent a fair bit of time with a company called Nortel Networks. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
It was at one time like the largest organization in Canada, and I worked for a group there that was building what they called in a box solution that you could put in all the retail outlets, like say a big retailer would have it. And that box will do everything for that retail outlet, whether it's voice, whether it's data, whether it's IVR system like Press 7 for pharmacy plus, right? So it was basically business in a box kind of solution. So I was building software for that box to manage them, to deploy them at scale, to monitor them, and so on and so forth. So that was a great learning experience because while it was in a large, more of a telco organization, Nortel was a PSTN and data and, right? But we were almost like a startup-ish within that because we were targeting a set of personas that the larger organization was not focused around. But then Nortel started having downside, and then at some point, we as a family decided to relocate back to India. So after spending about a decade in North Carolina, we decided to go back. And that's when CA happened.
Okay. Yeah, because had your mum recovered from you not being a doctor by this point in time? Like, yeah, you come back to India, it's like, okay, your mum's like, okay, I can see where this career is going. Like,
No. So we moved back for family. So like,
yeah,
parents, both sides of parents were very happy.
the CA is such a big part of the last 30 years of technology, and still exists today. Like, maybe we can touch on that in terms of they ended up at Broadcom, and everyone has gone, what? What's that? What does that all mean? I've got a view on that, and have written some stuff on it. But you've created some patents too. You have some patents to your name too. Was that with CA?
Yes, it was with CA. I think I have 3 of them.
Yeah. Well, which is, to me, that's the perfect example of the stuff you're talking about. The creativity with the with the engineering. It's the innovation. It's the patents. But I love like, people don't always understand what the process of a patent is and why it's important, but it's a big part of the tech industry, and certainly like in the US and other countries as well. Like, a lot of revenue comes from patents, aside from the creativity side of things. So I'm really interested to know what that process is. CA was. I was living in Sydney at the time when they were at their peak, and the car park of the CA building out at Artarmon, I think it was, it had like yellow Ferrari Spider 360s in it, which at the time, 2001, 170K US. Like, now they're still worth a couple of $100,000, so it was probably a good investment at the time. But and CA was famous for making their people very rich, right? But it was it also had an interesting culture. It was sort of known for being, quite aggressive in the market, and having having a certain way of dealing with customers. So, because obviously you don't make a lot of money unless you at that time in technology, try really hard to carve out your space in the market. So, like, the patent stuff would be interesting to talk about, but I know you're a culture guy as well, and so I just wonder what lessons you took from, the Charles Wang, Sanjay transition, or that whole moment where CA publicly imploded on the world stage.
So, fortunately, I actually joined way after all this happened.
Okay.
So I didn't see that.
Was there a corporate memory of that, though?
There was a corporate memory.
Yeah.
And what happened was, I think, CA became very defensive, very conservative after that, for right reasons, I think, because it was such a shock to the company.
I think it reverted to its engineering heart.
Yeah,
It's sort of all the flashy stuff on the outside. The ones that didn't go to prison, like, they just sort of disappeared and took their Ferraris. But in that period, the engineers were very much pushed to the front, and they were some of the smartest people in the room. My brain used to hurt going to those analyst sessions with them. I'd walk out going, I'm not sure I understand anything they just said, but I know this is good. I think it was very product driven company, especially after that when I started joining, and the customers loved the product. That was the part that kind of made it still afloat after all that implosion, and it was very embedded into customers' environment, processes, way of working. And mainframe stuff, the Clarity stuff, all of it?
Mainframe network management systems. So there was a CA and NMS, I think. So AI Ops, which later became AI Ops, but all the mainframe network management software. Those were very core to a lot of large institutes, right? And that was one of the reasons why Hawk10 decided to buy CA. And we can talk about it because I stayed for 2 years after it was bought.
I'd love to get there because I've recently written a piece about it, so I'd love to test your thinking on it. Yeah.
But going back to the patent thing, right? I never believed, like you said, there are companies who do patents because it's a source of revenue for them.
Yes.
And there are companies who are doing patent just, hey, we had a cool idea, we just want to defend it. by the time I joined CA, it was on the second, it was the latter, the thinking was on the latter side. And I always believe that when you're building a product, the patent should happen as part of the process of building something desirable.
Like a spark that happens
Yeah.
while you're in the moment?
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Like I would hope that's the way it happened or happens, you know. I'm sure there's some where it's, you know, created out of some mathematical sort of activity or whatever, but the creativity spark is...
So Peter, even till I had a patent, I seem to be of the opinion that these are very big things and great things, and you know. But once I filed for a patent and started to get first and second and a third one, I realized it's not that great. It's not a big deal, right? You're solving a business problem, and you just realize that nobody has done it that particular way,
Yeah.
and you file for patent.
Yeah.
Like, I remember my first patent was about the project and portfolio management software that we used to have. And it was always about knowing who is doing what work, what are the dependencies of that person with another task or another individual and things like that. But that's the time when cloud was coming in, virtual machines were coming in.
Yes.
And virtual machines were transient. They didn't they didn't keep up all the time. And you would run into a real issue would be that if you are dependent on running, let's say, a load test that's supposed to run for 7 days, and suddenly the machine goes down, now that impacts your project plan, right? So how do you incorporate in project planning the uptime or downtime of a resource that you are dependent on that's not human? That was the basis of one of the patents.
Yeah, okay. And so that would have been in the Clarity product then?
Yeah, I think it was once when we file for patent, we kind of don't kind of do a
Put the
product,
product name.
put the product
Yeah,
name.
sure.
But it was like around that principle.
That space, yeah, that functional space. Yeah, okay. And so you file for a patent, it gets approved, and
So the way most organizations process works is what you do is first you file for what you call an invention disclosure form within your organization. And then you have a group, typically patent lawyers that are in-house, who do prior art search just to make sure that there's nothing existing already.
Yeah.
And then they help you write it in a way that's defendable, which is not a fun thing to do as an engineer, because you're going to write in a particular way and they help you, guide you. And once they and collectively you believe this is worth filing for, there's no prior art, and it's defensible, then you go about filing for it.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time for a patent to get approved. And many a times it will be years, 2, 3, 4 years before your patent actually gets approved. And most organizations would give a plaque or something like that, which is a sense of pride, or have a patent wall. And CA took pride in his engineers having patents.
Yeah.
But CA was not filing patent for every whim and fancy. And it's also because it's a balance between the cost of filing versus is it worth it or not, is it defensible or not. But we never thought about, am I going to make money out of it?
Yeah. Yeah, that other great engineering firm, IBM.
Oh, yes.
Like, they are a patent factory. I think that's embedded in their culture.
Yes.
Like, when you're hired, you're expected to file patents every year. And I think to this day, or every year for the past 42 years or something, they've filed and received the most patents of any technology company, which is, you're going, oh, okay. you might expect that, but it's still, as you say, it's a massive process to go through. So that's the.
But they've made since I think they make billions of dollars on the
Yes.
right. That's what I don't remember
Yeah.
the exact amount, but so they've made a kind of, it's almost like a line of business for them. So they
Yes.
put the right amount of resources to kind of look for those things.
As an analyst, when you follow the executives that leave IBM and then they've sort of been promoted as high as they can go in IBM, didn't make the cut for a particular job, but end up becoming the CEO of a massive organization, another massive billion-dollar organization. One of the first things they do is go forensic on the patents associated with that company, because it is a massive part of the business. And at the end of the day, I mean, the technology industry is an engineering industry, and so there are some fundamentals. Like I said before, there's some physics like that really underpin and monetize how it all happens, which is fascinating. So, as well as the plaque, does Hock 10 have to cut you a check every year for the patent? Like, what's the?
I did not file a patent in Hock 10's world, so I don't know. But most of the time, the companies would, yes, give you a check.
Yeah.
But the check would typically come when the patent is filed.
Yeah.
Because most organizations have realized the approval process takes so long that it's not motivating if you hold that check back.
Yeah. So it's not like Mariah Carey at Christmas getting that $10 million check every year for whatever that song is called, which we don't have to repeat here. So what on the culture side then of CA, is there anything you took from them when you moved on? Like the good stuff, obviously.
Yeah. No, I think it was it was a very people-friendly culture.
Yeah.
Very people-friendly culture.
Yeah.
In some sense, at some time I felt that it was too people-friendly. So taking hard decisions is not easy in such a culture, and it's always hard to balance. And also felt that CA was not able to innovate at the same or a faster pace than how the world started changing. Because you have a mainframe business that was giving you a lot of dollars.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a balance between how do you keep the lights on that business, continue to milk it, but take the profits and invest it into something new and creative, which is gonna lose cash for a while.
Yeah.
Then how do you balance the funding of different lines of businesses, the appetite for the execs and the board to be able to continue to experiment because your margin goes down, and so on and so forth. So it was a good experience to see how do you straddle two boats, right? When you have this comfortable business versus the other one. And that's probably the time when Hock 10 came in.
Yeah, okay. And that's a whole process and a story that just repeats itself over and over again in technology as well. And if you look at the mainframe business, even over the last couple of years, I mean, IBM devolving itself, and Kyndryl sort of essentially taking over the mainframe business. It's that $20 billion spin out that it was. So that's interesting, sort of doubling down because, their story being that, well, a lot of banks and airlines and whatever still require this kind of computing. But then you have other companies like Fujitsu, who long-time mainframe company, but are now actively pivoting to be a services company and have said we'll be out of mainframes by 2030. They've sort of done their last sort of upgrades and they're actively transitioning out, and you go, wow, Fujitsu can get out of mainframes. But it's because the world changes, and it's been changing for a long time in that space in terms of even the move to mid-range computing, and then all the sort of cloud stuff that started to come. We've been a long time in transition, I think, but I think to your point, the lesson is that the market will change. Like at some point, the technology engineers can be the smartest people in the room, but someone has to be watching the market to make sure that the company stays relevant, because I think that balance of power has shifted, certainly in my time in technology, because it used to be all about the IBMs and all about the CAs and all about like the technology companies held such power, but the market holds a lot more now as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, by the way, like IBM did, BMC also did the same thing. BMC and Helix, right?
Yeah,
They kind of did the. But the market changes. Like nobody wants to be the next Nokia or a BlackBerry or a Blockbuster, right?
Yeah.
And I think we are right now in a pivotal time where, from the current set of leaders, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a next Nokia or a BlackBerry.
It's happening.
Yes.
It's happening. Like this is, my job is to give opinions, right? They don't mean anything, so most of them are ignored, but my job is to look at that. I actually think we're in perhaps the biggest inflection point in tech since 2000, like 2000, 2001. The cloud stuff, and I've been saying this for a number of years now, cloud computing has only been a transition stage. Mobility has only been a transition stage. Virtualization, microservices, integration, they've all been components of transition to sort of where we are now, which is like this new architecture that is more suited to the disruptive environment that is the new normal in the world today. We don't build things and lock them in rooms. We need something that can flex with us the next time there's a pandemic or a financial crisis or a geopolitical conflict or like whatever it is, a local economic recession, or you lose a supplier in your supply chain, like whatever it is. The old architectures don't work in that model. So when you sort of put all these things together, to me the challenge, and this is me with my analyst hat on, it's tiring sometimes listening to the marketing around all these important pieces, like transition things, but I think now, because marketing tech convinced everyone that cloud was where they needed to be, infrastructure as a service, and then convinced us that software as a service was where we needed to be, and then convinced us that, well, mobile services, and convinced us about like all these sort of things, that now we're having to re-educate the market to actually go, oh, hang on a sec, platform is now where we need to be because it was where we were always headed.
Yeah. So I think we live in a fascinating times, Peter, right? If you look back, like you talked about the previous technology changes, whether it was internet or mobile or cloud, one thing you would notice that the execs or the people who were leading the organizations were the laggards, and the people who work for them, the engineers, were experimenting with those technology. Like, I mean, you have, I think Steve Ballmer basically said mobile or iPhone will never have a market share, or Larry Ellison kind of dismissed cloud initially. And now you look at with agentic AI and generative AI, like 80% of the CEOs believe that that's the technology that will give them the profitability and the competitiveness in the market. Like the wallets are open.
Yeah.
But then you have McKinsey coming out saying that about 85% of these things don't, the pilots have not been giving ROI and things like that. So it's almost like things have been inverted now.
Yes.
With the execs pushing it, boards pushing it. I read a quote that says Gen AI is everywhere except in companies' P&L.
Yeah.
So,
well, you could say, I remember Doug Laney wrote a book years ago called Infonomics, and he talked about the economics of information inside an organisation and how we needed a line item in our P&Ls for information. It was a brilliant book, and it spoke to, I think, something that's still fundamentally a problem, which is organisations have always been terrible at data management, and it's still a problem, and it's almost like that problem has come home to roost. I think so. That's obviously something that needs to be fixed up so that we can start measuring ROI. But again, even the ROI, what are we trying to measure? Because if we're talking about agentic, it's not like we should be measuring an FTE against an agent, because an agent's going to be, more of a vertical slice for a part of that position description that you want to repeat at scale. And so some of the positioning that I see in the market is that, we can produce these agents and, we'll sell it to you at a cost of only a third of an FTE. And I'm looking at that going, that doesn't sound like a good bargain, because they're not doing a third of that person's job. They're doing this process or this workflow, and so we should be measuring what's our unit cost for that process. And it could be, like, payroll's a perfect example, right? It might take one organisation $4.63 per pay run per employee or something to run payroll. And then you might look at another organisation and go, well, they can do it for $3.72. And then you look at ADP and they'll go, well, just outsource it for $2.16. And then you look at agentic and you go, well, an agentic, agent doing payroll could probably do it for 68 cents. Okay, there's my ROI. But the problem is that workflow has never been properly articulated, costed, the data underneath it doesn't have an economic value, all these things, which is where we are.
Yeah, so I think looking at this current technology with only the eyes through the lens of productivity, I think is probably not correct.
Yeah.
It's because you could only drive so much cost arbitrage and savings and hit the bottom line.
Yeah.
I think it's the top line. I think it's the reimagining of your way of working, business, new revenue models, right? Look, internet got us so many new business models. The whole way of shopping changed, the whole way of transportation changed, the way of accommodation, hoteling changed, right? What new business models will we see because of this generative AI and agentic AI?
Yeah.
I think, to me, that's the interesting piece.
Yeah.
Like, that's where I think we'll see the new leaders.
I think that's right. The challenge is we seem to be in a hurry to get there because of quarterly reporting and all this kind of stuff. So we've sort of put ourselves in that position. And I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and it's obviously everyone is trying to rush to AI. There is real competition for market share. I think in some way it is causing confusion in the market, and it's slowing things down a little bit. Not because it's a recession, but I sort of call it a confidence recession, that it's like, well, I'm getting so many messages, we're not sure what to do. And so then, the CIOs who have lost a little bit of their authority over the last 10 years are also, there's lots of people in the organisation, they're slowing down the buying decisions, which is circling back to the partners and the technology companies who are trying to hit quarterly numbers, and then sales and marketing ramps up, more messages into the market, more confusion. And I think so that's what we've been experiencing for the last year or so. And I've been a customer, I've been an end user CIO, and I couldn't imagine today having to deal with 500 different agentic AI messages, right? That's what they're faced with. So what we're starting to see, I think, is that those customers are now going, we don't know. We know we need to do something. And so they're turning to their trusted advisors, which are the big partners, system integrators, MSPs, whatever you want to call them, and going, we don't know, what do you advise? And so I think that's where it's starting to play out, which is really interesting for a company like ServiceNow, because it's like, let's go back to our partner program. Why are we starting there? We need to be focusing on AI as a product. No, 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 no. If we don't own the trusted advice, we're going to lose the customer, right? Because then it's, that, to me, that's a pivotal point. And then you can get into those discussions because the customer's having a conversation with their trusted advisor about the business problems. You're starting to apply that technology to these new business models and sort of away we go. Yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a rant, but...
No, that's true. So there's this word called agent washing.
Yes.
Basically, you're taking your older BI and RPAs and automation and kind of coining them as agentic AI.
The industry's always done it though. Like, when are we going to learn a lesson? Like, this is what I mean about, we've convinced everyone that these were the endpoints, and actual fact they weren't. Now we have to unconvince them that this is the new endpoint.
But I think if you think through why the success in business with this new technology is slow, I mean, you could look at the roots are still like I always say, right? We've been hearing about digital transformation for decades. The fact is, organizations have digitized but not transformed.
Yeah.
Right? And you could, if you do it in the silo of your organization, you have an HR tech and CRM tech and marketing tech and IT tech. None of the use cases actually stick into your own one silo. Like, it's as simple as like, I lead a large part of our ServiceNow operations in all of India. So we do a lot of hiring. So a lot of onboarding happens. And a simple use case like an employee onboarding, goes through 4 or 5 different department handover, from IT to procurement to HR to finance and payroll, etc. And if each one of them have digitized within their silos, but are still exchanging emails or Excel sheets to do the work, and this is just a simple thing, and now you can extend to source to pay, order to cash, etc. So I think the inefficient processes, the siloed systems, etc., are getting way more exposed when somebody's at the top is saying, we need to put a layer of agentic on top of it, assuming things will work end to end. When it will not, it's just going to break.
Yeah, it's still, I see that too. That is the reality of organizations today, where these functional silos still exist. The handoffs are email, the delays in decision making and governance and budget approvals, even signing documents. Like, I do like strategy consulting and things like that, and it's difficult to have a conversation with customers today when you start to talk to them about, I think your fundamental problem is you try to approve too much with email, or maybe you should start looking at an electronic document signature, solution, and bring that into this, and maybe this department and this department need to come together and start working this out. And then they're like, no, we just need a new HR system. And so this is the mentality that I think they're still in. And you can't blame them, because that's the way we've been educated. And I think this is part of the re-education. The gaps are still there. The gaps in between the walls of the organisation are still there. But the difficulty is, we're not talking about junior executives inside organisations. We're talking about the executive of HR of a multi-billion-dollar organisation, right? Own budget control, own teams, want to make their own decision, feel empowered to do that. And this is where I think some of the core governance and architecture things that used to be so important 20 years ago have fallen away, because they've never looked at it like that, because that's always been taken care of by someone else. So it's a complex problem to solve, but we started that talking about how we're just in a hurry to get there, which isn't always helpful. The answer is, it might take a little while, isn't always helpful. But if you look at the internet, mad rush, big bubble, big pop, lots of brands appeared and disappeared. We finally settled into it, and it changed the world. look at cloud computing. Talked about it for a while. 2009 came onto the market. Every major vendor was now a cloud computing infrastructure as a service company. Took 3, 4, 5 years for that to get traction. Took a few more years to filter down to the 3 hyperscalers we have today. Now it's changed the world. We're going to see the same with AI, because fundamentally there's humans behind this, right? And so I think what part of the conversation I try to have with CEOs, though, is to say, we actually need to approach this differently. We need to actually throw out the thinking that we used for cloud computing and throw out the thinking that we use for internet and think, because to me, they're 20th century technology. They're the results of 20th century technology advances. AI comes out of the 21st century. We're 25 years into the 21st century. The business models are different. The business, the business drivers are different. The world's completely different. The workforce is completely different. The financial markets are completely different. We don't have the cheap labor that's driven global technology markets for the last 30 years. We don't have the cheap money that we've had for the last 30 years. And the labor and the money thing, they're fundamental to AI. But so therefore we need to reimagine the organization and reimagine the architecture. But I think too many organizations are still trying to solve the problem with the old toolkit. Yeah. Once we figure that out, this is going to go absolutely, atmospheric.
Absolutely, and I'm very optimistic about this technology, Peter, and the reason is because I think if you just look at generative AI, it's, in some sense, it's democratizing software.
Yeah.
Right? Earlier, you would have if a marketing guy has to launch a marketing campaign, that person is now dependent on the software part of the organization to build an app or a website or something like that. Now that person, being a functional owner, knows exactly what he or she wants and can, with few prompts, build an application.
Little buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
help me out. I don't know what I'm doing. I wish they would say, I don't know what I'm doing. I respectfully throw my ego over to the IT bot. I'm going to ask these questions. Please help me build this. That's the missing bit.
Exactly. And then as soon as it democratizes, it's like now a marketing guy or an HR guy or whoever, right? And that person now is able to do stuff that they own, their functional domain-wise. It's just going to get this exponential wave of AI usage, application, and so on and so forth. Yeah, when I was in college, the coolest thing to do was build a compiler. Write a LEX parser, YAC parser, build a compiler.
The magic behind the keyboard and the coding. I probably shouldn't tap the table, but
but in real life, how many people you need to build a compiler? How many compilers do you need?
Yeah.
Versus how many people you need to build applications? How many applications do you need?
Yeah.
I think slowly people will realize the same with this set of technology.
Yeah.
Is that the large language models, all that stuff, and the platforms, they need to be a handful, right? But there will be an explosion of the way people use this.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to be a lot more personalized, that I can build my own app for my own context for what I need.
Yeah.
That's going to be very different from what Peter needs and what Peter's context is, et cetera, right? So it's almost like software is getting personal.
Yeah. And also, the volume of information we've created since the rise of the internet, it makes it impossible as humans to do this on our own. So we need it.
We need it.
We've created the world where we need it. The fears and uncertainty around it, again, I see so many parallels to every new technology that's come out in the past. And if you think about, what's being fed into the large language models and all those sorts of arguments, there's not much difference to the data residency, and sovereignty arguments that have gone on. historically, we overcome them. But again, I just think that reinforces the fact that organisations realise at these inflection points how little time and effort they probably put into those core physics of technology, which is the governance and the architecture, elements that have allowed us to build the world we've got today. We do need to get back to that a little bit as well, and that gives some confidence, because then it's a case of those things are contextual frameworks that allows our simple brains to go, this is where it belongs. And that risk is covered because, we've followed this COBIT framework to say that, okay, it plugs in here. And actually, if we go back and look at some of the work being done by the associations that sit behind those things, they've actually figured some of that stuff out. It's just that we don't have people going back there anymore. So
yeah, and I think the regulatory boards, whether you're be it financial sector or insurance or whatever, are also going to evolve, right? I mean, there was a time when thou shall not go to cloud because we are a bank, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you have heard that before, right?
Yep.
We are hearing the same thing again.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. And that's why, the biggest challenge is taking a beat and trying to figure out what are the right strategic plays and decisions we need to make. I think this rush for market share is problematic in that it will create more losers than winners, because again, I think that platform is the biggest change since the internet. Platform as a service, hybrid platform architectures, and AI is an accelerant and a component within that. You need a platform as an organisation before you can plug agentic into it, before you can have all these things, because it feeds off that, right? And so I know why we're playing for AI, but I would just encourage so many organisations to go, what is our strategy here? What is our strategy, not just for what tech to buy, but who are we going to partner with and why? And how does this align with our organisation? And what do we need to fix inside our organisation in order to move forward? Because this is this is happening on our watch, and it will define the next 20 years of computing.
Yeah, absolutely. And also within platform also, Peter, I think the technology stack is changing.
Yes.
If you look at start from the top at the interface level, it's becoming multimodal for sure. But also what agentic would do, I think, is it would make the so-called enterprise apps invisible.
Yeah.
Right? You don't need a CRUD operation, so you would not have to work on them.
Yeah.
Right? And then the AI, with all the cost is going to come down so much. It's come down already in 2 years.
Yes.
That people will not worry about that element of it. And then the functionality of enterprise apps, the reasoning part of the large language models will take over the functionality of the apps. I think it was Satya himself who gave an example of Excel. Would you need pivot tables if you could just ask the question, look at the spreadsheet and tell me these, right?
Yeah.
So the functionality of various different apps will get subsumed because of the reasoning models. But the data is gaining a lot of credence. But I think there is this emergence of the need for a semantic understanding of the data within the enterprise.
Yes.
Before you can actually use it for agentic.
100%. But you can't start that conversation there, which is because it's the here's my baby, oh, your baby's ugly conversation, and that's a very difficult one to have. I agree with it. It's the fundamentals that we have been able to ignore with each of these advances in technology until you get to a point where, again, you arrive at a new foundational architecture and realize there's not really much further we can go without fixing this data. Now, we've been talking about data as the new oil and data as currency forever, like forever. But actually fixing it is something that has to be done now. And I'm seeing a lot of, like, in terms of what you're saying about data discovery and information availability and all that kind of stuff, there's certainly been a big rise in like knowledge graph interests, you know, in terms of how does all this stuff relate in order to help us achieve, you know, the outcomes that we're looking to achieve with AI. Aside from that, though, it's almost like it's that being applied as a semantic layer over our old database structures, you know, and so that tends to be where we're focusing at the moment until we sort of figure out the rest of, or most organisations figure out what they're going to do with their databases.
Yeah, there is also an emergence of open table formats. That's going to hopefully reduce the vendor lock-ins, etc.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at data, and I think you should look at data as like, how do I connect? How do I transform and do I understand and take action on it, right?
Yeah.
That's where the semantic layer comes into the play. But to your earlier point, Peter, I think when I talk to customers, I always have this feeling at the back of my mind is, am I selling the product or selling the tech before explaining the tech?
Yeah.
Because a lot of execs, for whatever lack of time, etc., have not spent enough calories understanding the technology. And a lot of skepticism, a lot of resistance to do the right thing for their organization is motivated by this fear that I actually do not understand how will it work.
Yeah, I think that's true. You know, for so long, CEOs took a lot of pride in saying, I don't understand anything about technology. At some point, they switched over to almost being influencers. But if you take the social media influencer as an example, and I talk a little bit about this in some of the writing that I do, that it's been the rise of this corporate influencer around the technology stack, which has caused the problems that we have today that we're now trying to unpack. How do you stop, like if you're a successful influencer on Instagram, how do you put that back in the box? How do you tell that person, well, you need to turn off your 30,000 followers, or you don't get this revenue stream, or you don't get to work with that company anymore? But that's where we're at with from a corporate perspective. So, but I agree with you that they're not invested enough in getting to the nuts and bolts of it. And this also comes back to the point we've sort of talked about a couple of times, where the role of the CIO has changed dramatically. And I think that coming back to the center of some of these conversations is really important as well. But I'm not sure how we get there because, you know, when you don't know what to do, you do more of what you know, or solving some of these problems are big organizational, cultural problems and change problems. And that's really for the CEO and the board to figure out how the executives work together. If the CIO isn't granted authority, but they also don't have the personal authority, it's almost impossible. And I've been in those situations as well, where it's just like, you know, the conversations happen with the CEO behind your back, and the head of engineering says, well, I need this for my business, and so you have to let me do my own thing. And the CEO goes, okay, you're my chief engineer, go build the road and you can have this PPM solution. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, shadow IT.
Shadow IT, yeah.
And but if you look at I think the budgets are still not with the CIOs yet.
I agree.
Right.
They're out there.
They're out there, right? And also I think the narrative that we have built as an industry about agentic AI, where we have kind of put jobs at the front of the conversation. Like every conversation that you have, somebody's going to ask you, oh, do you believe agentic AI or this AI will take away jobs? And I think that narrative just puts a very negative connotation on both the technology and the people whether you are an exec, whether you are rank and file in the organization. And to me, that we could have done a better job as an industry to kind of control that narrative.
It hands it over to politics, essentially. It's kind of, you can totally see, we're not far away from real politicians standing up and talking about health, education, agentic AI, as a political platform. So, I think we probably chased ourselves down a rabbit hole there, which is going to be a little bit difficult to unpack. But I think while the CIO refines its feet as organisations re-establish their strategic roadmaps at this important time, think about the fundamentals that they need to rebuild, and get back to making good decisions about where the organisation is going, some of that technology spend coming back together. I like to talk about funding flow, not functions. Like when you shine that spotlight on a budget and you go, well, no, this is just, we're funding this function, it's doing nothing to actually move you towards it. And so they're very difficult things to unpack, which never used to exist. But at the same time, I think we are better positioned to overcome some of the criticisms, valid criticisms that always used to be levelled at IT, which is you take too long, you don't give me the attention I need, this won't work for me. And again, this is where platform architecture is so fundamental, where your ability to build something from that pane of glass through to the back end, to pull together the workspaces, the services, the service catalogs, the knowledge bases, the workflows, the forms, the analytics, the AI, to be able to do that at speed because you have a platform and you have skills in that is the difference. We just have some credibility to regain.
True. Because also, I think what the platform and the framework gives a framework for the rest of the organization.
Yes.
You know how to play this game.
Yes.
Because if you remember when the cloud came in, everybody in the organization, rank and file, was swiping their corporate card and buying virtual machines, right?
Yeah.
It was Wild West.
Yeah.
Right? And then organizations understood that and kind of put a policy, a framework, and without constraining the freedom of creativity among the rank and file.
Yes.
But kind of gave a framework to it, right? I think that's what is going to happen now. Like people still worry, if we open up ChatGPT or Claude in our organization, we don't know what information employees will put out there, right?
Yeah.
Just like deja vu.
It's governance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me point you back to COVID, and risk and all those sorts of things. It's the same conversation. It's just that we've moved away from those fundamentals and we need to sort of move back there. But yeah, I mean, platform is the unifying part that is different this time, which is why I believe it's an end state. I know we're probably getting towards the end. I could talk to you for hours. Let me take you back to India, because I mean it has been the heartland of technology for the last 30 years. What's going to change in the next 10? Because for people that go to India and travel for work, because it's at the heart of technology. So, as an analyst, I pretty frequently go there. But what? Can you talk about the organised chaos that is India, just as a country itself? Because it can be quite, confronting when you first go.
Yeah.
So there's that, and I say that respectfully because one of the greatest books I've read on corporate India was written by the CEO of the city of Delhi, so the local government of Delhi. Mira, his name was HK Mira or something, or KH Mira, I think was his name, and he was the CEO of Delhi in the 5 years leading up to the 2010 Commonwealth Games. And it's a fascinating book because he's actually very open about the chaos of India, and that organisation 170,000 employees. It's a city government, right? Very
Yeah.
big city. But he talks about this chaos and recognises that, like, internally there's recognition for the chaos and things that need to change. So I just wonder, like, how you respond to that sort of organised chaos view of India, and then, like, where's it going?
Yeah, so if you, so India, it's like a Brownian motion. There's order and chaos. The use of technology as an engineer that I see in India is very gratifying. Like, for example, the India has come up with its own stack, right? The base of this was what we call Aadhaar, which is a unique identification number for each citizen. And that kind of rolled out to the entire country. It was a massive project. And then that became the basis, once you have that identification, digital identification, that you could start doing public services. The government can do services for citizens based on that. And that led to digital payments. Mm-hmm. Like almost every mom and pop shop or to high-end shops, right, would take digital payments, and it's very ubiquitous now. Then it also kind of started doing things like when you're traveling through the airport, how do you like just breeze through it because it's just capturing your biometrics and able to do that. So while the population is gone up and now we are the largest in the world, the digital ecosystem, the digital technology ecosystem has also been frantically evolving in the country. And that's kind of puts a little bit more order to the chaos, right? So from a tech perspective, just the size and scale and how it performs is just amazing.
Yeah.
Like
India without tech would be a scary prospect to consider, wouldn't it?
No, it's true. Though even myself included, a lot of people believe it will be fascinating to see if we can ever have an Indian traffic fully self-driven cars.
Oh boy. I mean, there's that argument. People complain about the traffic, but it's like, hello, you are the traffic.
Yeah,
like,
that's
you're
true.
complaining while you're in a car in the middle of it all. But
the traffic is not very organized, right? It's almost like playing video games.
It's next level unorganized. It's one of the most confronting parts of traveling to the big cities in India.
Yeah. That is true. But to me, like, the tech has been fascinating to see how it's evolved over the last 10, 15 years. You know cricket, right? Like cricket is a religion for us, right?
I come from the state of David Boone and Ricky Ponting.
Awesome. I love David Boone.
Yeah.
Anytime there is an IPL final or some important game is happening, you see the number of people watching the OTT, right? Because nobody watches TV. These are like OTT system. Like, it's like 50 crores. Like, it's a huge number.
Yeah.
And everybody is being fed almost real time.
Yeah.
So to me as a technologist, I'm always in awe of the performance and the scale of the tech that's behind these things.
Yeah.
That's serving that much live stream to such a large audience, right?
It is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It is for every aspect of life in India is phenomenal. That's what I mean. It just sort of it works, and when you're in the mix of it, and for the first couple of times it can be very confronting. But then when you're in, it's like everything's just happening.
Hey, you flow with it.
You flow with it. Well, you can't fight it, can you? Like, if you fight it, you're in trouble. But you've got a very senior role, SVP GM of the India Innovation Centre for ServiceNow. That's a big hat to wear. And so how do you? What's your view on balancing the growth and creativity from an engineering perspective and the product and the potential of the platform in that part of the world versus the organisation, you know, because you're custodian of the people as well that are beneath you. So how do you balance that? Like, what's a day look like for you when you're thinking about, the tech, the people, like...
There's lots of context switching. But I think one of the things that we have done right is almost everybody in India who's working on products, which is 70% of ServiceNow India works on products, has a global view because they're working on products that have global customers, global partners. And in that sense, there's a lot more understanding of the technology, of the customer feedback, of the competition, of the market and the industry. And that helps people build the right products. But we also have a good portion of our organization in India who are part of our digital technology organization who roll out these products internally first as customer zero. And then we also have our support center, our HR shared services, our finance procurement desks, our IT, etc., who are the users of the products. So I have the luxury of the builders, implementers, and the users all sitting in the same building.
Yeah.
And that kind of helps create this ecosystem of feedback loop and collaboration and co-innovation and co-ideation that I think helps us, keep grounded of what's working, what's not working, and come up with new ideas on the new features and so on and so forth. And as long as I think you are doing good creative work with a sense of purpose, people like it.
Yeah. It's a beautiful campus too.
It is.
Over there. So, it's kind of, you're very attractive, I imagine, to people that want to work like over there, not just because of who the company is, but the facilities that you offer. And so I've been fortunate enough to be over to the campus, and it is very impressive. I spent some time living in the Middle East as well, and in the early 2000s in Dubai, and the government there structured things like similarly. There was Dubai Internet City where all the tech companies were, and so we had a campus and we shared them with all the global tech companies. And you go down to one of the eateries at lunchtime and it'd be everybody from every part of the world and every technology company there, and it was just a great vibe. And you had to go next door. There was Dubai Knowledge City, which was all the universities, and you go next door and it was Dubai Media City where all the media companies were. And I noted it's sort of similar there, where there are other tech companies in that environment.
Absolutely,
as well.
and I can walk down without taking out my car to about 10 or 12 good quality restaurants and pubs.
Yeah.
And it's not uncommon that you overhear on the next table somebody talking about model context protocols and A2A and large language model and transformers. It's just the ecosystem there. Yeah.
How tempting it must be for you to stop and talk to them, or just sort of listen.
It is.
What's going on. So, what's something you do with you on your downtime, on your day off? Like, how does Sumeet relax with all these things on your shoulders? Like these, there's, you wouldn't have a lot of time to yourself, I imagine.
I think catch up on sleep.
Yeah.
Spend time with family, the usual stuff. Pick up a good book to read or hear a podcast.
Very human things.
Very human things. Very human.
I know
things.
A good Substack you could read.
I know.
Yeah.
I do read that.
No, and I do appreciate it as well. Sumeet, this has been a great conversation.
Absolutely.
I wish we could go for another hour, but maybe we do it again, in a year or so, and see where we're at with AI and everything else that's going on in such an amazing time for you and your company, and for all of us.
All of us, I think. We live in a very interesting times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.